A 9-year-old boy murders the parents of a teenager who cheated him out of $16, grinds their bodies into chili, and feeds that chili to their son while his favorite band watches him cry. That is the plot of Season 5, Episode 4 of South Park. It aired on July 11th, 2001. The episode is called Scott to Norman Must Die, and it is, by almost universal agreement among fans, critics, and the show's own creators, the single most important episode in the entire history of the series. Not because of the murder, not because of the chili, but because of the boy who planned it all, and then stood there, watching his victim weep, and licked the tears off his face. His name is Eric Theodore Cartman. And by the time that episode was over, he had stopped being a fat kid who said terrible things and had become something the show had been hinting at since 1997, but had never fully committed to putting on screen. A genuine monster, wearing a child's body like a costume, standing in the construction paper snow of a small Colorado town, smiling because the tears of unfathomable sadness tasted good to him. This is a video about every time he went too far, not the times he was rude or petty or selfish in the ordinary way that children are selfish. This is about the times the show looked you in the eye and told you that this character, this animated fourth grader made of colored paper and digital geometry, was capable of things that would fill a courtroom if you describe them without the comedy attached. Things that would make you recoil. Things that would make you sick. And then the show made you laugh anyway. And then, in the silence after the laugh, the show waited to see if you noticed what you had just laughed at. That silence is the subject of this video. This is Paper Town. Settle in. This is going to take a very long time. And if you fall asleep somewhere in the middle, that is exactly what this is for. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this reresis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The place to begin is the place the show itself began its transformation, because everything that comes after this episode exists in its shadow. Every time Cartman does something monstrous in seasons 6 through 26, the audience already knows that he is capable of what he did in season 5. That knowledge hangs over every joke. It colors every interaction. It makes every moment where Cartman pretends to be a normal child, whining about homework, arguing about video games, bickering with Kyle about nothing, feel like a mask slipping. The mask might stay on for most of the episode, but the audience has already seen what is behind it, and that changes everything. Before Scott Tenorman Must Die, Cartman's cruelty operates on a child's scale. He is a bigot, but the bigotry is reflexive, not strategic. He calls Kyle a Jew because it is the worst thing he can think of, and because calling Kyle a Jew reliably produces a reaction, and because producing reactions is the only currency that matters to a 9-year-old who has no other form of power. He cheats because winning matters to him more than fairness. He lies because lying works. He throws tantrums because tantrums produce results in a household where his mother has never learned to say no. He is, in the universe of the show's first 4 seasons, a particularly awful child. Recognizable, identifiable. The kind of kid whose other parents talk about in whispered tones at school pickup, shaking their heads, wondering what went wrong. The first 4 seasons of South Park contain dozens of moments where Cartman is cruel, selfish, manipulative, and vicious. He dresses as Hitler for Halloween. He leads rallies. He schemes and plots and backstabs. But all of these acts exist within a framework that the audience intuitively understands. He is a bad kid. A really, really bad kid, but still a kid, still operating within the recognizable spectrum of what a child can be, even a terrible child. The audience assumes he will grow out of it, or that the show will eventually punish him, or that the fundamental structure of the comedy, in which Cartman's schemes backfire and his arrogance is deflated, will hold. Cartman loses. That is the rule. That is how the show works. The universe corrects for his awfulness. Order is restored. The audience can laugh because they know the laugh is safe. Scott Tenorman Must Die is the episode where the universe stops correcting. The setup is almost aggressively mundane. Eric Cartman is bragging to Stan, Kyle, and Kenny that he has reached puberty because he has acquired his first pubic hair. The other boys immediately identify the problem. Cartman did not grow the hair. He purchased it. A teenager named Scott Tenorman sold Cartman his own pubic hair for $10. And Cartman, who does not understand how puberty works, believed that buying someone else's pubic hair was equivalent to growing his own. Kyle explains the situation to Cartman with the bluntness that Kyle has always reserved for the moments when Cartman's stupidity becomes genuinely unbearable. Cartman's response is not embarrassment. It is not self-reflection. It is rage. He goes to Scott Tenorman's house and demands his money back. Scott refuses. Cartman tries again. Scott humiliates him. Cartman tries a different scheme. Scott sees through it and humiliates him further, extracting an additional $6.12 in the process. Every attempt Cartman makes to recover his original $10 results in a greater loss, both financial and social. The older boy is smarter than him, more experienced, more socially powerful, and crucially, the older boy is enjoying himself. Scott is not just defending himself against Cartman's attempts to recoup his money. He is actively tormenting him. He tricks Cartman into traveling to Fort Collins for a non-existent pubic hair fair. He publicly plays a video of Cartman doing something humiliating. He invites the entire town to watch. The episode lets you see Cartman being humiliated. It lets you sit with that humiliation. It lets you, the audience, enjoy it a little, because Cartman has spent 4 seasons being awful to everyone around him, and there is a deep satisfaction in watching someone finally give him what he deserves. The episode uses your satisfaction against you. It needs you to feel comfortable watching Cartman lose. It needs you to believe that this is the pattern, that this is how the episode will end, that the lesson will be about the consequences of arrogance and the dangers of picking fights with people who are smarter than you. Because that belief that Cartman is going to lose, that the universe is going to correct for his behavior, is what makes the ending work. The ending only hits as hard as it does because you did not see it coming. And you did not see it coming because the show spent 20 minutes conditioning you to expect a different outcome. Cartman's final plan involves multiple layers, each one nested inside the others, like something out of a heist film. He invites Radiohead, Scott Tenorman's favorite band, to come to South Park by writing them a letter, claiming that Scott is a little boy dying of cancer who idolizes them. He organizes a chili cook-off. He tells Stan and Kyle about a scheme to train a local farmer's pony to bite off Scott's penis at a certain time and place. He tells them this knowing with absolute certainty that Stan and Kyle will warn Scott. He tells them this knowing that Scott will then warn the pony's owner, the farmer named Dinkins. He tells them this knowing that the warning will bring Scott's parents to the Dinkins Ranch at a specific time. He plants the information like a seed. He watches it grow. Stan and Kyle warn Scott. Scott goes to Dinkins and warns him about the pony plan. Dinkins, who has been told by Cartman to shoot anyone who comes onto his property because they are trespassing, encounters Scott's parents on his ranch. The details of what happens next are left mostly off-screen. The show does not show you the killing. It does not need to. It shows you the chili. At the cook-off, Cartman presents his entry. Scott, believing he has sabotaged Cartman's chili by swapping it with his own batch, which contains Cartman's pubic hair, which Scott's friends helped him collect, eats Cartman's chili with theatrical satisfaction. He reveals the swap. He tells Cartman he just ate his own pubic hair. He waits for the horror, and then Cartman reveals his own swap. He reveals that he knew Scott would try to swap the chili. He reveals that the chili Scott just ate was not made from pubic hair. It was made from Scott's parents. He reveals that the farmer killed them. He reveals that he took their bodies. He reveals that he cooked them. He reveals everything, piece by piece, watching Scott's face as each detail lands, and Scott falls to his knees, and the tears come, and Radiohead arrives and sees Scott crying, and mocks him, and leaves. And Cartman stands there, above Scott, and talks about the tears, how they taste, how delicious they are, the tears of unfathomable sadness. The episode does not play music in this scene. It does not provide commentary. Kyle says quietly that he and Stan should never, ever make Cartman angry, and the episode ends. Parker and Stone have described this episode as the moment Cartman transformed from, in their words, a little troublemaker into the most evil kid in the world. They have spoken about how the episode changed the way they wrote the character going forward, shifting him from a nuisance into something genuinely dangerous. The episode introduced significant changes in Cartman's characterization, setting the standard for his psychopathic antics in the following seasons, and it prompted the creators to focus on a single plot within an episode, rather than the loosely connected subplots of earlier seasons. The episode is frequently cited as a retelling of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, the Elizabethan revenge tragedy, in which the protagonist feeds a woman her own sons baked into a pie. Whether the parallel was intentional or discovered after the fact, the literary DNA is there. The revenge is not proportional. The revenge is not rational. The revenge is total. It does not simply punish the offender. It destroys the offender's world and makes the offender consume that destruction, literally, before revealing what has been consumed. And the show does not punish Cartman for this. Nobody arrests him. Nobody reports him. Nobody even processes what has happened. Kyle's final line is not a call to justice. It is a warning. Do not make him angry. That is the lesson. Not that Cartman should face consequences. That the rest of the world should learn to stay out of his way. That silence, the silence where the consequences should be, is the show telling you something it will spend the next 20 years demonstrating. Eric Cartman is not a character who exists within a moral framework. He is a character who reveals the absence of one. The show around him, the adults, the institutions, the systems of South Park, is incapable of holding him accountable. Not because the systems are evil, because the systems are incompetent, because the adults are too distracted, too confused, too invested in their own problems to notice that a 9-year-old just committed murder and is standing in the snow, smiling about it. The gap between what Cartman does and what happens to him afterward is where the show lives. It is where the comedy lives, and it is where the horror lives. And the show has never, in more than 2 decades, resolved that gap. It has only widened it. 3 years after Scott Tenorman's parents became a recipe, Cartman found something more dangerous than a grudge. He found an ideology. The Passion of the Jew is the 3rd episode of Season 8. It aired on March 31st, 2004, exactly 1 month after Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ had opened in theaters and become one of the most controversial cultural events of the decade. The film was praised by evangelical audiences as a powerful depiction of Christ's final hours. It was condemned by critics as gratuitously violent. It was debated relentlessly and exhaustingly for what it said and did not say about the responsibility of Jewish people for the crucifixion of Jesus. South Park, being South Park, addressed all of this in 22 minutes. But the show did not just satirize the film or the discourse around it. It used the film as a lens through which to examine something about Cartman that the audience had known for years, but had never seen expressed at this scale. Cartman has seen The Passion of the Christ 34 times by the time the episode begins. He has been using it as evidence in his ongoing case against Kyle, telling him that the film proves the Jewish people killed Jesus and that everyone knows it. When Kyle, pressured by the argument, actually goes to see the film, he is deeply disturbed. He comes to Cartman and tells him that Cartman was right about the Jewish people all along. And something changes in Cartman's face. Something lights up. Not the face of a child who has won an argument. The face of a person who has been handed a weapon. Cartman goes home. He kneels before a poster of Mel Gibson. He prays. He vows to dedicate his life to spreading the film's message. And then he begins to organize. The organization starts small. Cartman forms a fan club for the film. He holds meetings in his backyard. He wears a brown uniform. The uniform looks exactly like what you think it looks like. The adults who attend the meetings are sincere, thoughtful Christians who have come because they want to celebrate what the film meant to their faith. They want to be better people. They want to reconnect with their religion. They are not bigots. They are not extremists. They are ordinary people who liked a movie about Jesus and want to talk about it with other people who liked it. Cartman stands in front of them and begins steering. The steering is gradual. He suggests that each attendee bring one more person to see the film. He calls this process the cleansing. The attendees agree cheerfully, hearing the word as a metaphor for spiritual renewal. Cartman means it as something else entirely. He begins planning rallies. He begins printing materials. He begins practicing speeches in front of a mirror, speaking in German, rehearsing phrases that, if anyone in the room understood German, would end the scene immediately. The rally scene is one of the most precisely constructed sequences in South Park's history. Cartman leads his followers through the streets of South Park. They are marching in formation. They are chanting. They believe they are chanting in Aramaic, the language spoken in the film. They are chanting in German. The subtitles translate the chanting. It is time for revenge. We must exterminate the Jews. The marchers do not know this. They are smiling. They are goose-stepping, and they do not know they are goose-stepping. They are being led by a 9-year-old in a brown uniform, and they do not see the uniform for what it is. The scene works on multiple levels simultaneously. As satire, it argues that the distance between religious enthusiasm and organized hatred can be collapsed by a single charismatic figure willing to exploit the gap between what people feel and what they understand. As a character study, it reveals that Cartman's anti-Semitism is not casual. It is not reflexive. Given the right conditions, a cultural moment, a captive audience, a framework of legitimacy, his hatred can scale, can organize, can march through the streets in broad daylight, while the people doing the marching believe they are doing something holy. As commentary on how extremism actually works, the scene is uncomfortably accurate. The mechanisms it depicts, the co-opting of sincere belief, the use of language that means one thing to the leader and another to the followers. The gradual escalation from celebration to activism to something darker are the same mechanisms that scholars of radicalization have documented in contexts far more serious than a cartoon. Stan's speech at the end of the episode resolves the conflict with an argument about focusing on Jesus' teachings rather than his death. The followers disperse. Gibson himself arrives and is humiliated. Kyle recovers from his crisis of faith. Order is, in some loose sense, restored. But Cartman is never made to answer for what he did. The show lets him walk away from the wreckage of his scheme with no consequence other than Gibson defecating on him, which Cartman finds undignified but not devastating. And the thing that lingers long after the episode ends is the image of those ordinary people marching. Not because they were evil, because they were not paying attention, because nobody was paying attention, because a 9-year-old boy in a brown uniform was standing at the front of the march, and nobody looked at him long enough to see what he was wearing. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this reresis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If the Passion of the Jew is Cartman at his most ideologically dangerous, and Scott to Norman Must Die is Cartman at his most spectacularly violent, then Casa Bonita is something different, and in some ways more revealing. It is Cartman at his most nakedly obsessive. It is the episode that shows you, with surgical clarity, that the scale of Cartman's cruelty has no fixed relationship to the scale of the thing he wants. He will cause exactly as much suffering as a situation requires, no more and no less. And the amount required is determined entirely by his desire, not by any external standard of proportionality. Season 7, Episode 11, November 12th, 2003. Written and directed by Trey Parker. The premise is straightforward. Kyle is having his birthday party at Casa Bonita, a real Mexican-themed restaurant in the Denver suburb of Lakewood, Colorado, that Parker and Stone loved as children and would eventually purchase in 2021. Casa Bonita has cliff divers. It has a cave. It has a waterfall. It has the kind of over-the-top theatrical dining experience that for a 9-year-old might as well be Disneyland. Kyle is bringing 3 friends. He chooses Stan, Kenny, and Butters, not Cartman. Kyle's decision is not impulsive. It is not petty. He has a reason. He explains, calmly and clearly, that Cartman has spent years mocking him for being Jewish. The show then cuts to a montage of those insults. The montage is long. It covers years of abuse. It is, functionally, a highlight reel of everything Cartman has said to Kyle about his religion since the show began. By the time the montage ends, Kyle's case is airtight. Nobody in the audience disagrees. Nobody thinks Cartman deserves an invitation. Cartman disagrees. He disagrees with every cell in his body. He denies having ever said anything bad about Kyle's religion, even as the montage is still playing. When denial fails, he shifts to charm. He decides to prove that he is nice. This is a concept so foreign to his nature that his first attempts are catastrophically unsuccessful. He tries to demonstrate kindness by beating up Jimmy Velmer in front of Kyle, claiming that Jimmy was saying terrible things about Kyle's mother. Kyle watches this happen and asks Cartman if he really thinks beating up a handicapped kid constitutes being nice. Eventually, Cartman manages something that resembles a genuine apology. He tells Kyle that he is sorry for the way he has treated him. He says that even though they do not always get along, they have been through a lot together. Kyle, touched by what appears to be a sincere moment, tells Cartman that if Butters is for some reason unable to attend, Cartman can take his place. That sentence is a key turning in a lock. Cartman hears it, he processes it, and his mind, which has been operating in the mode of social manipulation, switches instantly to the mode of operational planning. Butters needs to be unable to attend. That is the only variable. Everything else is fixed. What follows is a sequence that demonstrates, with the precision of a military operation, how Cartman's mind works when it has identified a clear objective and is no longer constrained by any consideration other than achieving it. He goes to Butters. He tells him, with a tone of voice that is simultaneously urgent and compassionate, that a meteor the size of Wyoming is about to hit Earth. He tells Butters that the only way to survive is to hide. He takes Butters to Jimbo Kern's bomb shelter. He stocks the shelter with food and water. He closes the door. That detail, the food and water, is one of the most important details in the episode. It tells you that Cartman is not trying to kill Butters. He does not want Butters to die. He does not even want Butters to suffer, necessarily. He just needs Butters to not exist in a social context for approximately 1 week. Butters is not a person to Cartman in this episode. He is a scheduling conflict. The food and water are not compassion. They are logistics. When the search for Butters forces Kyle to postpone the party by a week, Cartman does not panic. He adapts. He moves Butters out of the bomb shelter, telling him that the meteor has hit, that civilization has collapsed, that the world is overrun by radioactive cannibals. He makes Butters wear a cardboard box over his head, so he cannot see that everything outside is completely normal, claiming that the radiation is too terrible for him to look at. He relocates Butters to an abandoned gas station. He locks him in a refrigerator, telling him that he, Cartman, has been bitten by a cannibal and is about to turn into one himself. So Butters needs to stay inside the refrigerator for his own protection. A garbage truck arrives. The refrigerator, with Butters inside it, is taken to the city dump. Butters emerges and looks around at the wreckage of discarded furniture, broken appliances, and piles of refuse, and he does not realize he is in a dump. He believes he is looking at the ruins of civilization. He finds a stray dog. He names the dog. He begins trying to rebuild society. A junkyard worker named Irene eventually finds Butters and tells him the truth. No meteor hit. The world is fine. The entire town of South Park has been looking for him for over a week. Cartman lied about everything. The birthday party finally happens. The group arrives at Casa Bonita, and the moment they walk through the door, Kyle's mother gets a phone call. Butters has been found. Cartman's role has been discovered. The police are on their way, and Cartman, standing inside the restaurant he has spent the entire episode scheming to get into, does not apologize. He does not surrender. He runs. He sprints through Casa Bonita, touching every surface, eating every food, riding every ride, experiencing every single thing the restaurant has to offer in the 90 seconds before the police catch him. He dives off the waterfall. He is pulled from the water. A police officer tells him what he has done: caused a town-wide panic, traumatized a child, broken the law, lost all his friends, earned a week in juvenile hall. The officer asks if it was worth it. Cartman, floating on his back in the water, staring at the ceiling of the restaurant he loves, says the word that distills his entire character into 2 syllables: totally. That word is not a joke. It is a diagnosis. It tells you that the suffering Cartman causes is not a cost he weighs against his desires. It is not a factor. It is invisible. He genuinely, structurally, cannot connect the damage he does to the things he wants. The damage is not something he ignores. It is something he does not perceive. Butters was underground for a week, terrified, alone, building a civilization out of garbage in a dump, believing himself to be the last person alive. And Cartman's honest, unguarded assessment of the situation is that the taco was worth it. The cliff diver was worth it. The waterfall was worth it. Totally. The distance between what Cartman wanted and what Cartman was willing to do to get it is the entire point of the episode. And that distance is not large. It is not small. It does not exist. There is no gap between desire and action because there is no mechanism inside Cartman that creates one. Normal people have that mechanism. It is called empathy. It is the part of the brain that says, before you act, what will this do to someone else? Cartman does not have it. Casa Bonita is the episode that proves he does not have it, not through some grand dramatic reveal, but through the simple, devastating observation that a child who locked another child in a refrigerator for a restaurant dinner considers the whole experience to have been totally worth it. 1 week before The Passion of the Jew aired, South Park broadcast an episode that many people remember as the one where Jimmy takes steroids, and most people forget is also the one where Cartman fakes being disabled to steal money from children with genuine disabilities. Up the Down, Steroid is the second episode of Season 8. It aired on March 24th, 2004. The title is a parody of the novel Up the Down Staircase. The main plot follows Jimmy Valmer, who is preparing to compete in the Special Olympics in Denver and begins using steroids to improve his performance. But the Cartman subplot, which runs parallel to Jimmy's story, is the one that matters for this video because it reveals something about the specific flavor of Cartman's shamelessness that the bigger, more dramatic episodes sometimes obscure. Cartman sees a brochure for the Special Olympics. He reads the prize money, $1,000 to the winner, and his mind immediately performs a calculation that is breathtaking in its simplicity and devastating in its assumptions. He assumes that he, an able-bodied 9-year-old, will easily beat every disabled competitor in every event. He does not research this assumption. He does not test it. He does not consider the possibility that athletes with disabilities might be, in many cases, better trained, more disciplined, and more physically fit than a child whose primary form of exercise is walking to the refrigerator. He simply assumes that disability equals inferiority, and he plans accordingly. His preparation is one of the most uncomfortable sequences the show has ever produced. He practices in front of a mirror, contorting his face, slurring his speech, mimicking behaviors he associates with intellectual disability. He studies videos. He rehearses. He treats the impersonation with the same focus and determination that a method actor might bring to a challenging role, except that the role he is preparing for is a grotesque caricature of real people with real conditions, and the purpose of the performance is to steal their money. Kyle tries to stop him. Kyle, who has spent years watching Cartman do terrible things and responding with either rage or resignation, tries something different in this episode. He appeals to Cartman's soul. He tells him, sincerely, that what he is planning to do is so bad that he will go to hell for it. He uses the word friend. He is genuinely trying, out of what appears to be authentic moral concern, to prevent Cartman from crossing a line that even by Cartman's standards is extraordinary. And Cartman dismisses him by saying that hell is reserved for Jewish people and walks away. Cartman's mother, Leanne, also tries to stop him. She is one of the only adults in the show's history who ever objects to Cartman's plans before they are executed. She tells him that he cannot cheat children with disabilities. Cartman pivots instantly. He tells her he does not want to cheat. He tells her he wants to understand what it is like to face the challenges that disabled children face every day. He tells her this experience will change him. Leanne, who has never been able to say no to her son and cannot start now, agrees to take him. At the Special Olympics, Cartman's plan collapses in the most satisfying way the show has ever engineered a failure. He is not just beaten, he is destroyed. He comes in last in every event. The competitors, all of whom have been training intensively, outperform him without apparent effort. The episode reveals, through the simple mechanism of showing what actually happens, that Cartman's assumptions about disability were wrong in every conceivable way. The disabled athletes are stronger, faster, and more dedicated than he is. His prejudice was not just morally wrong, it was factually wrong. He could not even get the bigotry right. He receives a consolation prize, a gift voucher to Shakey's Pizza, and in the final scene, he tells Stan and Kyle that the entire thing was a calculated performance designed to teach Jimmy a lesson about the dangers of steroid use. Stan and Kyle stare at him. They do not believe him. Cartman tells them to grow up and walks away. The episode is important, not because Cartman succeeds. He fails, spectacularly, but because of what his attempt reveals about how he sees people. Disability, to Cartman, is not a condition. It is a costume, something you put on and take off. Something that, if you wear it convincingly enough, entitles you to things you did not earn. The fact that he uses real people's real experiences as a disguise, and that he does this for money, and that the amount of money is $1,000, is the show telling you that Cartman's disregard for other people's humanity is not just profound, it is cheap. $1,000. That is the price at which Eric Cartman values the dignity of every disabled child in the state of Colorado. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this reresis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The thing about the worst acts Cartman has committed is that some of them are loud and some of them are quiet. Scott to Norman Must Die is loud. The Passion of the Jew is loud. The March Through the Streets, the chili at the cook-off, the alliance with an ancient god. These are acts that announce themselves. They are operatic in their scope and theatrical in their execution, and the show frames them with the appropriate weight and gravity. Tonsil Trouble is quiet. It happens in a bedroom, at night, while someone is sleeping. Season 12, Episode 1, March 12th, 2008. Cartman goes in for a routine tonsillectomy. The surgery itself is fine. The blood transfusion that accompanies the surgery is not. The hospital at Hell's Pass uses an infected blood sample. Cartman contracts HIV. When the diagnosis is delivered, the doctors try to soften the blow by giving him the ice cream they promised he would receive after the surgery. Cartman's response to the ice cream is one of the most revealing moments of honest emotion the character has ever displayed. He does not want ice cream. He wants to not have HIV. He screams at them. He curses. He means it. When Cartman's classmates are informed of his diagnosis, the reactions are varied. Most of the children are awkward and uncertain, the way children are when confronted with something they do not understand and have not been taught to process. A benefit is organized. It is poorly attended. Jimmy Buffett performs instead of Elton John. The indifference is institutional. Nobody knows how to care about AIDS anymore. Cancer has taken its place in the hierarchy of diseases that matter. Cartman, for perhaps the first time in his life, is experiencing what it feels like to be genuinely invisible. Not invisible because people are ignoring him. Invisible because the thing that is happening to him does not register as important to the culture around him. Kyle laughs. The laughter needs to be understood in context, because the show gives you the context with careful precision. Kyle has watched Cartman do terrible things for years. He has watched Cartman call him slurs. He has watched Cartman organize marches against Jewish people. He has watched Cartman lie and cheat and manipulate and, in at least one case, murder. He has watched all of this happen, and he has watched the universe fail, again and again, to provide any kind of consequence. And now, finally, something has happened to Cartman that Cartman cannot scheme his way out of. Kyle does not laugh because he wishes harm on Cartman. He laughs because the universe has finally, after years of silence, spoken. It is said, "Here is your consequence." The laugh is the sound of cosmic justice arriving late and unannounced. Cartman hears it differently. Cartman hears mockery. He hears an enemy celebrating his suffering. And Cartman does what Cartman has always done when he feels attacked. He retaliates. Except this time, the retaliation is not a scheme, or a trick, or an elaborate plan. It is direct. It is physical. It is medical. He goes to Kyle's house at night. He brings Butters, who helps him enter through the window. He draws his own blood. He fills a syringe. He approaches Kyle, who is sleeping, and drips the infected blood into Kyle's mouth. Kyle swallows it. He does not wake up. Cartman and Butters leave. Kyle is diagnosed with HIV the next day. Doctor asks him if he has been having unprotected sexual contact. Kyle, who is 9 years old, says he is not. He then realizes, with the specific kind of horror that only arrives when a person understands not just what has happened, but who did it and why, that Cartman infected him deliberately. Kyle finds Cartman. He does not speak to him. He begins hitting him. He hits him in the schoolyard, in the hallway, on the ground. The beating is sustained and desperate and full of a fury that goes beyond anger into something that looks like grief. Kyle is not fighting Cartman. He is fighting the realization that he lives in a world where this can happen, where a person can do this to another person and the universe will not prevent it, will not intervene, will not even notice until the damage is already done. The school's response is the episode's darkest joke. Principal Victoria makes Cartman apologize. Then she tells Kyle to apologize for tattling. The two are declared even. Kyle stands in the hallway afterward with an expression that the animation, despite its simplicity, conveys with devastating clarity. He is looking at the system that was supposed to protect him and seeing that it has nothing. It has no tools for what just happened. It has apologies and even-handedness and a belief that all conflicts are symmetrical, and none of those things are adequate for the situation of a child being deliberately infected with a fatal disease by another child. Kyle goes to Cartman's house and begins destroying everything Cartman owns. He rips apart stuffed animals. He smashes possessions. He approaches the Xbox 360, and Cartman, who has endured the destruction of everything else with something approaching acceptance, draws the line at the Xbox. He pleads. He bargains. He tells Kyle that he has been researching and believes that Magic Johnson, who has been living with HIV for years, may hold the key to a cure. They go to Magic Johnson's house. They find that he keeps enormous amounts of cash in his bedroom. They discover that concentrated doses of money, literally liquefied cash injected into the bloodstream, neutralize the virus. The cure is made. Kyle and Cartman are saved. A celebration is held. Kyle tries to tell the gathered crowd that Cartman is the one who infected him in the first place. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. The story is too complicated. The cure is too exciting. The narrative that fits, two brave boys working together to defeat a disease, is too satisfying to interrupt with the truth. Cartman insists they are even. Kyle tells him he is going to break his Xbox anyway. The episode ends. The episode's message is layered. There is a satire about how society has moved on from caring about AIDS. There is a parody of the Philadelphia narrative. There is a joke about Magic Johnson. But underneath all of that, the episode is doing something that is genuinely unsettling, which is showing you how a system responds when the thing that has happened is too extreme for its categories. The school does not have a category for child deliberately infects other child with HIV. It has a category for children fighting, so it applies the category it has. It makes them apologize. It declares them even. And the inadequacy of that response is not played as institutional malice. It is played as institutional incompetence. The system is not evil. It is simply unequipped to deal with evil. And when evil shows up, it defaults to the only tools it has, and those tools are completely, catastrophically inadequate. That dynamic, Cartman doing something enormous and the system responding with something small, is the pattern that defines his entire existence on the show. And Tonsil Trouble is the episode that makes the pattern most visible, because the act is so specific, so physical, so intimate, that the gap between what happened and how it is handled cannot be ignored. South Park has always been interested in how hatred scales. Not hatred as a feeling, hatred as a project. The show has spent decades showing how a slur becomes a speech, how a speech becomes a movement, how a movement becomes a march, how a march becomes a plan. No episode demonstrates this progression more clearly than Ginger Kids. Season 9, Episode 11, November 9th, 2005. The episode begins with a class presentation. Cartman stands in front of his classmates and delivers a speech arguing that children with red hair, freckles, and pale skin suffer from a condition called gingivitis. He claims they have no souls. He claims they cannot tolerate sunlight. He uses the Bible as a source, asserting that Judas Iscariot was a ginger. He delivers all of this with the absolute conviction of someone who has never once been asked to provide evidence for his beliefs, because the social environment he operates in, a fourth grade classroom supervised by an adult who does not intervene, has never required evidence. It has only required confidence. The presentation works. Other students begin discriminating against ginger children. They push them. They exclude them. They force them to eat in the hallway. The prejudice spreads through the school with the speed and efficiency of an actual disease, which is the episode's first and most obvious irony. Cartman's invented disease creates real social consequences. Kyle tries to counter with science. He does his own presentation about the genetics of red hair, explaining that it is a recessive trait, not a condition. His presentation is accurate, well-sourced, and completely ineffective. Cartman's rhetoric is simpler, more emotional, and more satisfying. It gives the other children permission to do something they were already inclined to do, which is identify someone as different and punish them for it. Kyle's facts cannot compete with that. Stan, Kyle, and Kenny decide to teach Cartman a lesson through direct experience. They sneak into his room while he sleeps. They dye his hair red. They bleach his skin pale. They draw freckles on his face with henna. They transform him, physically, into the thing he has been teaching everyone to hate. Cartman wakes up. He looks in the mirror. He screams. His mother considers having him euthanized. His doctor suggests the same thing. He goes to school and faces the exact discrimination he initiated. He is laughed at by Butters. He is pushed out of the cafeteria. He is treated the way he taught everyone to treat people who look like him. A normal character placed in this position might learn something, might recognize the cruelty they started, might experience from the inside what it feels like to be on the receiving end of the hatred they created. The episode sets up this possibility with deliberate precision. It creates the conditions for empathy. It gives Cartman every opportunity to feel what his victims feel and to change as a result. Cartman does not change. Cartman escalates. He forms the Ginger Separatist movement. He gathers the ginger children of South Park. He begins with rhetoric about equality and quickly transitions to rhetoric about supremacy. The gingers are not just equal. They are the master race, the chosen people. They are superior to everyone else, and everyone else is a threat that needs to be eliminated. The movement grows. It organizes. It acquires resources. It beats up a girl for playing the role of Little Orphan Annie, despite not being a real ginger. The cultural appropriation of red hair, weaponized as a justification for violence. The movement begins abducting non-ginger children from their homes. It brings them to a conference room in the airport Hilton, where a pool of lava has been set up for the purpose of execution. A pool of lava in a hotel conference room for the extermination of children. Kyle, as a daywalker, a person with red hair, but no freckles or pale skin, is selected as the first to die. He is brought to the edge of the lava, and before he is thrown in, he whispers to Cartman that the transformation was fake, that they dyed his hair, that he is not a ginger, that none of this is real. Cartman processes this information in approximately 2 seconds. He realizes that if his followers learn the truth, they will kill him. So he tells them he has had an epiphany. He tells them that everyone should live in peace. He leads them in a song about harmony. The children are freed. The lava is presumably cleaned up by the hotel staff. Kyle calls Cartman a manipulative asshole. Cartman agrees, but notes that he is not going to die and walks away. The episode is a complete, self-contained demonstration of how Cartman's mind processes ideology. He does not have beliefs. He has positions. The positions change depending on what serves him. When hating gingers serves him, he hates gingers with the passion of a true believer. When being a ginger serves him, he loves gingers with the passion of a revolutionary. When neither position serves him, he drops both and walks away. The only constant is Cartman. The only principle is survival. And the thing that makes this episode genuinely disturbing, rather than merely satirical, is that the machinery Cartman builds works. The ginger separatist movement is real. The abductions are real. The lava pit is real. The children who are terrified are really terrified. The system functions. It produces real consequences. And it is built on nothing. Built on a lie that Cartman told in a classroom, which became a prejudice that other children adopted, which became a movement that Cartman organized, which became a mechanism for mass violence. The foundation is hollow. Every beam and strut is hollow. And the building stands anyway, because the people inside it believe in it. And belief in the logic of South Park is sufficient infrastructure for anything, including genocide. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this Ririsis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Le Petit Tourette is one of the most acclaimed episodes in the show's history. It aired on October 3rd, 2007, as the 8th episode of Season 11. The Tourette Syndrome Association publicly praised it for raising awareness about the condition. Fan polls consistently rank it among the show's best. It is funny, tight, well-structured, and features one of the most satisfying narrative reversals the show has ever produced. It is also the episode where Cartman attempts to deliver an anti-Semitic hate speech on national television by exploiting the social infrastructure designed to protect people with genuine neurological conditions. The scheme begins at a toy store where Cartman encounters a boy named Thomas who has Tourette syndrome. Thomas involuntarily shouts obscenities. His mother and the other shoppers explain the condition to Cartman. They explain that Thomas cannot control what he says. They explain that the appropriate response is understanding and accommodation. They explain that nobody should punish Thomas for his outbursts because the outbursts are not his fault. Cartman hears all of this. He processes it. And he exits the toy store singing a version of the Golden Ticket song from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory because he has just discovered that there exists a medical condition that, if he can successfully fake it, will allow him to say anything he wants, including the things he has always wanted to say but has been prevented from saying by the thin, inadequate membrane of social consequence that normally surrounds speech. He fakes the diagnosis. His mother is concerned enough to take him to a doctor. The doctor diagnoses him. The school is notified, and Cartman begins his campaign. He walks through the school hallways, shouting slurs, insults, and vulgarities at everyone he passes. He targets Kyle's parents specifically, shouting anti-Semitic remarks directly at Gerald and Sheila Broflovsky. Nobody stops him. Nobody punishes him. The diagnosis is a force field. Kyle sees through it instantly. He goes to Principal Victoria and tells her that Cartman is faking. A representative from the Tourette's Tolerance and Understanding Foundation, who has Tourette syndrome himself, interprets Kyle's accusation as an attack on everyone with the condition. Kyle is sent to a children's support group, where real children with real Tourette syndrome explain how difficult their lives are. They explain the involuntary tics, the social isolation, the constant embarrassment of a body that says things the mind does not intend. Kyle listens. He understands. And he is forced to apologize to Cartman because the system cannot distinguish between Kyle's accurate accusation and the hypothetical accusation of a bigot. The system only has one response to "that person is faking a disability," and the response is, "you are the problem." Cartman's endgame is revealed midway through the episode. He contacts Chris Hansen of Dateline NBC and arranges to appear on the show as a young person bravely living with Tourette syndrome. His plan is to use the national platform to deliver an anti-Semitic hate speech that will be broadcast to millions of viewers, all of it protected by his fake diagnosis. He will say the things he has always wanted to say, and nobody will be able to stop him, because stopping him would mean punishing a child with a disability for symptoms of his disability, and nobody wants to be the person who does that. The plan fails, but not because the system catches him. The plan fails because Cartman's sustained commitment to saying whatever comes into his mind, the prolonged practice of removing all filters between thought and speech, eventually erodes his own internal barriers. He begins involuntarily confessing things he does not want to confess. He tells Kyle that he wet the bed last night. He tells a crowd that he cries at night because he does not have a father. He admits to having a crush on a girl named Patty Nelson. The fake Tourette syndrome has, through a kind of poetic mechanism, become real. His mouth has learned that it can say anything, and it has begun saying things he actually wants to hide. Kyle and Thomas sabotage the Dateline taping by luring pedophiles to the studio, who shoot themselves upon seeing Chris Hansen. The broadcast is ruined. Cartman is saved from public humiliation. And in the episode's final moment, a moment that is genuinely surprising and genuinely affecting, Cartman thanks Kyle. Sincerely, he hugs him. He tells Kyle that he saved him from humiliating himself on live television. He walks away singing the Golden Ticket song, on his way to find a psychiatrist who can help him regain the mental filters he has lost. Kyle stares after him. He has won. Cartman has been stopped. But Kyle does not feel like he has won, because the system that allowed Cartman to get as far as he did, the diagnosis that nobody questioned, the foundation representative who silenced Kyle, the school that punished the whistleblower and protected the fraud, that system is still in place. And the next time Cartman finds something to exploit, the system will respond the same way, because the system does not learn. The system only has the tools it has, and those tools cannot tell the difference between a person who is telling the truth and a person who is wearing the truth like a costume. In the fall of 2010, Cartman acquired the most powerful ally he would ever have. Not a person, not an institution, a god. The Coon trilogy spans 3 episodes of season 14. Coon 2, Hindsight, aired on October 27th. 2010. Mysterion Rises aired on November 3rd. Coon vs. Coon and Friends aired on November 10th. The trilogy is, at its structural core, a story about Kenny McCormick and the revelation that his recurring deaths and resurrections are not a running gag, but an actual superpower with a genuine supernatural explanation. That story is compelling and strange and moving, but woven through it, like a thread of arsenic through silk, is a Cartman story that takes his particular brand of evil and scales it to a level the show has never attempted before and has never attempted since. The premise involves the boys playing superhero. Cartman is the Coon, a vigilante modeled on dark-toned comic book films. He speaks in a gravelly whisper. He gives inner monologues. He disappears mid-conversation. The other boys form a team called Coon and Friends. The team has noble goals. They want to help people. They want to make a difference. They are children playing dress-up, but they are playing it with sincerity. Cartman's version of superheroism is different. His version has nothing to do with helping people and everything to do with Cartman being recognized as the leader. When the team votes him out for being, in their collective assessment, a dick, Cartman does not accept the result. He does not argue. He does not appeal. He leaves the room and begins planning revenge. The revenge arrives in the form of Cthulhu, the Lovecraftian elder god, who has been accidentally released from the deep ocean by a drilling company. Cthulhu is an incomprehensible being of pure destruction, an entity that exists beyond human categories of good and evil, a force that should, by any rational assessment, be impossible to control, impossible to communicate with, impossible to direct. Cartman walks up to Cthulhu. He acts cute. He rubs Cthulhu's belly. The scene is animated as a parody of My Neighbor Totoro, the beloved Studio Ghibli film, with Cartman riding on Cthulhu's belly through the sky, both of them smiling, both of them happy, while below them, the world burns. The show depicts their partnership as a montage. Cartman points, Cthulhu destroys, a synagogue, a group of hippies, the entire city of San Francisco. Each destruction is rendered in the same bright, cheerful animation style as the rest of the montage. There is no shift in tone, no darkening of the palette, no ominous music, just 2 friends flying through the sky, destroying things together the way that friends in a children's film might pick flowers together. The violence is vast, impersonal, and joyful. When Coon and Friends try to stop Cartman, when Mysterion confronts him directly, when the team refuses to accept his authority, Cartman has Cthulhu banish them to another dimension. He eliminates the opposition. He does not negotiate. He does not compromise. He uses an elder god, the way a child uses a squirt gun, point and shoot. And the thing that makes this arc genuinely unsettling despite the absurdity of the premise, is Cartman's sincerity. He is not performing evil. He is not twirling a mustache. He genuinely believes he is making the world a better place. He believes that destroying a synagogue makes the world better. He believes that obliterating San Francisco makes the world better. He believes that eliminating the people who disagree with him makes the world better. His alliance with Cthulhu is not ironic. It is earnest. He has found a friend who shares his values and has the power to implement them, and he is happy. The gap between what Cartman believes he is doing and what he is actually doing is the entire point of the trilogy. He is a 9-year-old who thinks he is saving the world. He is actually causing mass destruction on a cosmic scale, and the show never resolves this gap. It never makes Cartman confront the reality of what he has done. It never forces him to see the corpses in San Francisco, or the rubble of the synagogue, or the faces of the people he banished to another dimension. He remains, throughout the trilogy, cheerfully, sincerely, terrifyingly certain that he is the hero. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this Ririsis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is an episode in season 17 where Cartman shoots a classmate. Not in a dream, not in a fantasy, not in a cutaway gag. He shoots Tolkien Black with a gun on a street while Tolkien is walking toward him for a fist bump. World War Zimmerman aired on October 9th, 2013. It is the third episode of season 17. The title parodies the 2013 film World War Z, and the episode itself is a sustained commentary on the killing of Trayvon Martin by George Zimmerman and the Stand Your Ground laws that became a central part of the national conversation that followed. Cartman has been having nightmares. The nightmares are cinematic, framed as scenes from World War Z, except that the zombies are African Americans rioting in response to the Zimmerman verdict. And Patient Zero, the person the outbreak starts from, is Tolkien Black. Cartman genuinely believes that Tolkien represents a threat to all humanity, not because Tolkien has done anything, not because Tolkien has threatened anyone, because Cartman's imagination has transformed a cultural event into an apocalyptic scenario, and his imagination has cast the only black child in his immediate social circle as the source of the apocalypse. The episode follows Cartman through an escalating series of actions, driven entirely by this delusion. He tries to befriend Tolkien as a containment strategy. He commandeers a plane, which crashes. He goes to a gun store and learns about Stand Your Ground laws. He travels to Florida. He puts on blackface and approaches George Zimmerman's house, hoping that Zimmerman will shoot him and thus be eliminated as a threat. Zimmerman does shoot him. Federal agents congratulate Zimmerman for defending himself, until they realize that the person he shot is white. Zimmerman is immediately tried, convicted, and executed. The double standard is presented without commentary. The audience is left to draw its own conclusions. Cartman returns to South Park. He finds Tolkien on the street. He spray paints a red circle on the ground around himself. He apologizes. He offers a fist bump. Tolkien, cautious but willing, steps forward, and Cartman shoots him. The camera holds on Tolkien's body, lying on the ground, inside the circle that Cartman drew. Cartman adjusts Tolkien's position to make sure the body is within the circle's boundary. He was standing his ground. The episode reveals, in the following scene, that Tolkien survived. He appears in Mr. Mackey's office, bandaged but alive. Mackey tells both boys to apologize to each other. Tolkien refuses. He does not object to the shooting specifically. He objects to the entire framework. He objects to the idea that Stand Your Ground laws exist for people who look like Cartman and are applied against people who look like him. He is not angry about a single act of violence. He is angry about a system. And as Tolkien's anger rises, Cartman's face changes. He sees the anger. He interprets it through his delusional framework. He believes the outbreak is starting again. The episode cuts to another plane crash. The genius of the episode is that it never resolves the conflict. It never gives Tolkien justice. It never punishes Cartman for shooting a child. It never even fully acknowledges, within its narrative, that what Cartman did was a crime rather than a dispute. The system treats the shooting the same way the system treated the HIV infection and tonsil trouble, as a conflict between two parties who are equally at fault and who need to apologize to each other. The asymmetry, the fact that one party shot the other, does not register as relevant. Season 15, Episode 5, May 25th, 2011. Crack Baby Athletic Association. The title alone is doing about 80% of the work of telling you what this episode is about, and about 90% of the work of telling you why it belongs on a list of Cartman's worst moments. Kyle volunteers at a hospital to to help babies born addicted to crack. He arrives expecting to see other volunteers. He sees Cartman. Cartman is already there. He has been there for a while. He is wearing scrubs. He is signing in. He is, to all outward appearances, doing charitable work with vulnerable infants. Kyle follows him. He finds that Cartman, along with Craig, Clyde, and Butters, has been taking the crack-addicted babies and organizing them into a sports league. The babies fight each other over a small rock of crack. The fights are staged in a room. The babies are placed on a surface. The crack is placed between them. They fight for it. Cartman films the fights. He has been developing the league as a business. The business prospers. Cartman negotiates a video game deal with EA Sports. He visits the University of Colorado dressed as a 19th century plantation owner, complete with the accent and the attitude, to find out how the university manages to profit from the labor of its student athletes without compensating them. He is trying to learn from an existing model of exploitation. He is studying. He is doing research. The research fails. The university administrators are offended by his outfit and his language. But the impulse is instructive. Cartman does not see what he is doing as exceptional. He sees it as normal. He sees it as business. He sees the crack babies the way the NCAA sees its athletes, as a resource that generates revenue and does not need to be paid. Kyle, drawn into the scheme against his better judgment, proposes using 30% of the video game revenue to build an orphanage for the babies. Cartman agrees, not because he cares about the babies, but because the orphanage will generate goodwill and protect the operation from scrutiny. The orphanage is a PR strategy. The babies are an asset class. The deal with EA Sports falls through when EA's executive, depicted as a bourbon-drinking Southern planter, informs them that the contract gives EA all the rights and all the revenue. The boys lose everything. The orphanage is somehow built anyway, through a miraculous intervention that the episode attributes to the guitarist Slash, who may or may not be a Santa Claus figure. The episode is a satire of the NCAA and the broader question of how institutions profit from uncompensated labor while claiming to serve the people they exploit. But within the Cartman canon, it serves a different function. It shows you how Cartman processes exploitation, not as a moral category, but as a business category. He does not think he is doing something wrong. He thinks he is doing something well. The difference between his operation and the NCAA's operation, in his mind, is not that one is evil and the other is legitimate. It is that one is smaller and the other is bigger. The mechanism is the same. The ethics are the same. The babies, like the athletes, are performing for an audience that profits from their performance while they receive nothing in return. That equivalence, stated flatly by the show, underlined by Cartman's visit to the university, made explicit by every scene in which Cartman discusses the league in the language of sports management, is the episode's central argument. And the argument is not that Cartman is worse than the NCAA. The argument is that he is the same. And the reason the show can make that argument without it feeling like a stretch is because Cartman has been doing this his whole life. He has always treated people as resources. He has always treated suffering as an externality. He has always operated within a framework where the only relevant question is whether a given course of action produces a result he wants, and all other considerations, the feelings of the people involved, the damage caused, the ethical implications, are noise. The crack babies are noise. Their suffering is noise. Their addiction is noise. The only signal in Cartman's framework is the revenue. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this Reresis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. For 20 seasons, South Park kept Cartman's cruelty at a certain distance. The distance was built into the show's structure. Cartman's evil was spectacular. It was dramatic. It was the kind of evil that makes headlines and generates internet lists and inspires Halloween costumes. He murdered parents. He organized fascist marches. He befriended ancient gods. He exploited crack babies. These are acts that exist in a different dimension from ordinary life. And part of the show's genius has always been the way it uses that dimension. The dimension of absurdity, of animation, of construction paper snow, to make you laugh at things you could not laugh at if they were happening in front of you. And then, in season 20, the show collapsed the distance. It brought Cartman's evil down from the mythic scale and placed it in a kitchen. It brought it into a living room. It placed it inside a phone call. It made it look like a relationship. Cartman got a girlfriend. Her name was Heidi Turner, and what happened between them over the course of 2 seasons is, by any honest assessment, the worst thing he has ever done. Not the most dramatic, not the most spectacular, not the most likely to generate a headline or inspire a list. The worst, because it is the most real. The relationship begins in the fall of 2016. Both Cartman and Heidi have been cut off from social media. Cartman's devices have been destroyed by his friends. Heidi has voluntarily deleted her accounts after being targeted by an online troll whose identity she does not know. They find each other in the space that opens when the internet disappears. They are both alone. They are both adrift. They begin talking. They begin spending time together. They begin to see in each other something that neither of them expected to find. For several episodes, the show does something that it has never done with Cartman before. It makes him tender. He holds Heidi's hand. He calls her smart and funny. He says these things not as a manipulation, not as a tactic, not as a step in a scheme. He says them because, in the absence of the internet and the social dynamics that the internet creates, he has found a person who makes him feel less alone. And that feeling, the simple, human, uncomplicated feeling of being less alone, temporarily quiets the machinery of cruelty that has been running inside him since the show began. The audience watches this happen and does not know what to make of it. Some viewers believe Cartman is genuinely changing. Some believe it is a long con. Some believe the show has made a mistake, that softening Cartman undermines the character, that redemption arcs are not what South Park is for. The uncertainty is genuine. The show plays it straight. There are episodes in season 20 where Cartman and Heidi's relationship is the most functional, most emotionally honest relationship on the show. There are scenes where Cartman listens, where he cares, where the mask is off, and there is something underneath that. If you tilt your head and squint, might be a person. Season 21 destroys this possibility, methodically, precisely, without mercy. The season 21 premiere, White People Renovating Houses, opens on the relationship in decay. Cartman is sitting with his friends. Heidi walks in, and the change in his body language is instantaneous. His shoulders tighten, his voice drops, his face goes blank. He does not greet her. He endures her. When she leaves, he turns to his friends and begins complaining about her. He calls her controlling. He says she changes like Jekyll and Hyde. He claims she mentally abuses him. None of this is true. It is all projection. He is describing himself and attributing the description to her. Heidi calls him that night. She points out an inconsistency in something he said. She is gentle about it. She is not attacking him. She is trying to understand. Cartman hangs up, annoyed. He does not want to be understood. He does not want to be questioned. He wants to be in a relationship in which the other person exists entirely on his terms, responds entirely to his moods, and never, under any circumstances, asks him to account for himself. When Heidi tries to break up with him, Cartman threatens to kill himself. He does this multiple times across the season. He does it in front of her. He does it in front of other people. He makes her responsible for his survival. He transforms her concern for him, her genuine human concern that he might actually harm himself, into a chain. She stays, not because she wants to, because she is afraid of what will happen if she leaves. In Doubling Down, the 7th episode of season 21, which aired on November 8th, 2017, the mechanics of the abuse are made explicit. Cartman blames his cruelty on his diet. Heidi suggests a vegan diet. He agrees, then secretly feeds her KFC that he labels as a vegan alternative. She gains weight. He makes fun of her weight behind her back. He tells his friends she is getting fat. He tells his friends she is crazy. He tells his friends she needs help. Kyle intervenes. He talks to Heidi after school. He tells her that Cartman is an expert at playing the victim. He tells her that Cartman will never change. Heidi and Kyle begin to develop feelings for each other. They exchange notes. They spend time together. For a few scenes, Heidi begins to look like the person she was before the relationship. Curious, intelligent, alive. Cartman discovers the relationship. He confronts Kyle at school. Kyle punches him. Cartman goes down in one hit. The physical contest between them, which the show has kept ambiguous for 20 seasons, is resolved in a single frame. Kyle is stronger. Cartman is weaker. The power Cartman holds over the people around him has never been physical. It has always been psychological. It has always been the power of someone who is willing to say and do things that other people will not say and do. And the willingness itself is the weapon. The girls take Heidi out to dinner. They mock her for ever dating Cartman. They make her feel small. They make her feel stupid. And the combination of public humiliation and private doubt sends Heidi back to Cartman. Not because she loves him, because the alternative, being alone, being mocked, being the girl who was dumb enough to date Cartman, feels worse. Cartman takes her back, and then he begins the transformation. He feeds her more KFC disguised as vegan food. She gains more weight. He teaches her his anti-Semitic worldview, explaining to her why Jewish people are the source of the world's problems. He reshapes her beliefs. He reshapes her body. He reshapes her personality. By the end of the season, Heidi Turner has become a version of Eric Cartman. She is angry. She is cruel. She is overweight. She bullies Kyle. She uses the same rhetoric Cartman uses. She has been remade in his image, not through a single dramatic act, but through the slow, patient, daily work of psychological manipulation. The show depicts this transformation with the specificity of a clinical case study. It does not rush through it. It does not skip the uncomfortable parts. It sits in the discomfort. It makes you watch each stage of the degradation. It makes you watch Heidi change, episode by episode, from a smart, kind, curious person into a damaged, hostile, hollowed-out version of herself. And the show does this without melodrama, without music cues, without a single moment where a character turns to the camera and explains that what you are watching is abuse. The show trusts you to see it. It trusts you to recognize the pattern, because the pattern is one that exists in the real world, in real relationships, in real lives. In the season 21 finale, Splatty Tomato, Heidi finds a gun. She points it at Cartman. She blames him for the person she has become. And Cartman, faced with the only form of consequence that has ever been available to him, physical force, the threat of real, immediate harm, does what he always does. He threatens to kill himself. He tells her that if she leaves him, he will die. He has said this before. It has worked before. It has kept her chained to him through multiple breakups, multiple reconciliations, multiple cycles of abuse. This time, it does not work. Heidi puts the gun down, not because she believes him, not because she is afraid, because she has realized, in a moment, the show renders with almost no dialogue and almost no movement, that she has been engaging in self-victimization, that she has been using Cartman's awfulness as an excuse to avoid taking responsibility for her own choices, that the chain was never locked. She was holding it herself. She walks away. Cartman is left alone. The season ends. The Cartman-Heidi arc is different from everything else on this list because it operates at the scale of ordinary life. There is no murder. There is no ancient god. There is no chili made from human remains. There is a boy who tells a girl she is smart and funny, and then tells his friends she is crazy, and then feeds her food that makes her sick, and then teaches her to hate the people he hates, and then threatens to kill himself when she tries to leave. There is a girl who stays because she is afraid of what will happen if she goes, and who slowly, over weeks and months and episodes, becomes someone she does not recognize. This is not the Cartman of Scott Tenorman Must Die. This is not a Cartman whose evil is mythic and distant and safely encased in the amber of absurdity. This is a Cartman whose evil operates through the specific, granular, recognizable mechanics of intimate partner abuse. The isolation, the gaslighting, the alternation between warmth and cruelty. The way the abuser makes the victim responsible for managing his emotions. The way the victim's identity erodes until the person she was before the relationship becomes a stranger she can barely remember. This is Cartman at his most mundane. And because it is his most mundane, it is his most dangerous. And because it is his most dangerous, it is the worst thing he has ever done. The list of things Cartman has done that would qualify as going too far is longer than any single video can contain. He has dressed as Hitler twice. He has organized multiple movements whose stated goal was the extermination of a group of people. He has deliberately infected another child with a terminal illness. He has shot a classmate. He has trapped a child in a bomb shelter for a restaurant dinner. He has exploited infants for profit. He has befriended an ancient god and used that god to destroy a city. He has faked disabilities for money and sympathy. He has weaponized the systems designed to protect vulnerable people and turned those systems against the people trying to tell the truth. Any one of these acts, described without the animation, without the jokes, without the construction paper snow, and the cheerful music, and the particular rhythm of Trey Parker's voice acting, would be a crime. Several of them would be crimes that carry sentences measured in decades. Stated together, in sequence, they read like a rap sheet from a tribunal rather than a character summary from a comedy show. And yet, Eric Cartman remains one of the most beloved characters in the history of American television. People wear his face on t-shirts. They quote his lines at parties. They dress as him for Halloween. They name their pets after him. They love him, not despite what he does, because of what he does. Because the show has constructed him to be irresistible. Because the show has given him the best lines, the biggest moments, the most memorable schemes. Because the show has made him the reason people tune in, the reason people talk about the show the next morning, the reason people tell their friends they need to watch this episode, specifically this episode, because you will not believe what Cartman does. And the show has been asking, for more than a quarter century, what that love means. Not whether it is wrong to love Cartman, not whether the audience should feel guilty for laughing. The show is not interested in guilt. Guilt is easy. Guilt is the currency of people who want to feel like they have reckoned with something without actually reckoning with it. The show is interested in something harder. The show is interested in the gap between what Cartman does and what happens to him. The gap between what you see on screen and what you would call it if it happened next door. The gap between laughing and knowing that what you are laughing at, stripped of its frame, would not be funny at all. That gap is where the show lives. It is where the character lives. It is where the audience lives. Every time they sit down to watch an episode and know, with absolute certainty, that Cartman is going to do something terrible, and know, with equal certainty, that they are going to enjoy it. The construction paper does not make it safe. It never did. The construction paper is the gap made visible. It is the distance between reality and representation, rendered in the cheapest possible materials, held together by the thinnest possible threads. And every episode, the show pulls on those threads a little harder. And every episode, the audience pretends not to notice that the fabric is getting thinner. Cartman has crossed the line so many times that the line itself has become meaningless. He has erased it. He has redrawn it behind himself and then crossed it again. The question was never whether he would go too far. The question was always whether you would follow him when he did. And for 26 seasons, and counting, the answer has been yes, every time, without exception. That is not a small thing. That might be the whole story. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.